Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So to kick things off, I just wanted to show some data from a recent report that we published. So let's get that on screen. And quickly to define the collaborative economy. Oh, that's the wrong URL. Can you click left or right on that image? Let's see. Maybe we'll come back to that. So the collaborative economy means that the crowd is empowered to get what they need from each other. And what I was going to show, but it's not showing, is how the crowd can get goods, services, transportation, and even like housing and space from each other. But the one that we really want to focus on is really around how people can get money from each other. And what I did a recent report, and we'll send this out to everybody, but crowdfunding, getting money from other people, peer-to-peer, versus them getting it from a traditional institution like an investor or a bank, is now starting to be on the rise, and we're going to see nearly double adoption rate in this space. We polled over 90,000 people, US, Canada, and UK, to find out what are their current partaking in the space, and then in the future. And apparently Flickr is not working. But we'll get that data out, and I'll tweet that to you. But instead of focusing on that, let's take a look at the Indiegogo homepage, the website, and let's take a look at how that actually works. As we're pulling that up, Danae, maybe you could share with us your background from why did you start this, and I understand you have a background in the financial analysis space.
Yeah. So I should start actually by saying that I grew up in San Francisco, and I was a daughter of two small business owners, and it was a brick and mortar business, and so I watched them struggle for 30 plus years to grow their business because not once could they actually get an outside loan. And in our venture world, we call that bootstrapping for 30 years. So I actually just grew up with how frustrating it was. Every dinner table conversation was about how to make payroll, should we refinance the house to, hire more people and stuff like that. So when I graduated college, I went into finance to really understand how money worked, and actually got roped into helping filmmakers and theater producers on the side because my heart made me do that. And started failing for the same reasons my parents failed. I was actually failing helping these ideas get off the ground, not for lack of heart and hustle, but purely because I didn't know the right people. And I actually did an event where Arthur Miller had given us permission to put up a play about racial profiling, which was right after September 11th in New York City, very hot topic. And I got a one-night event up. I got a Broadway theater to give us their space. We got people there to watch. We got actors to volunteer their time, even Richard Dreyfuss. And the whole goal was me to get investors there at the end of the night to witness the whole thing and then write the check. And everything went perfect except that last bit where they turned to me and they said, "This was an amazing production. Everyone loved it. We're not investing. Good luck." And I didn't have the track record. I didn't have this, Broadway name at all. And it became very clear to me that I didn't know the right people. And it was in that moment that I realized that the people who wanted the play to come to life, which were the actors in the audience, didn't actually have the power mechanism to make it happen.
Because there's middle people involved.
They're completely dependent on third party, as we call them, gatekeepers or decision makers whose interests may or may not align. And so the result of that is that it became clear that the way finance was broken to me was that access to capital was really inefficient. It was all caught up in these nodes of decision makers who weren't necessarily letting capital flow freely. And as a result, ideas were going unborn every day. And as a result, finance became incredibly unfair for people who couldn't access those networks.
So that gave the idea for Indiegogo. But
Yeah.
what does the name mean? Is it independent going forward? What does that mean?
It's unleashing the independent spirit. Any idea, whether it's big or small, should have the right to at least go and try. That's why Indiegogo, we launched I went back to business school to start the company in 2006 and met my co-founders there who had experienced the same frustration with fundraising. And we launched January 2008 with the mission to democratize access to capital, where literally every person on the planet should have an opportunity to raise money, which is why we created an open platform, and that kind of invented the crowdfunding industry.
So let's talk about that now. Here's your homepage, Indiegogo.com. And I was surprised to hear, even though you're one of the co-founders, and we pulled this page up in the back room, that you said to me, "I don't even know what's going to be on the homepage."
It's true.
What is that about?
So back to our philosophy, which is to create an equal opportunity for anybody to get their idea off the ground. We've created this open platform where all you need is a bank account to get started. So we have campaigns in every country, contributors every country, ideas every industry. So whether it's film, a small business, a technology, a gadget, a nonprofit, a charity, wherever you are in the world, you can use Indiegogo. And to really support this belief that we think everyone deserves a right to get their idea off the ground, we've created a meritocracy on the platform. So we've actually developed an algorithm called the Gogo Factor. Gogo Factor,
Okay.
which is similar to Google's PageRank algorithm, where the harder you work and the more your audience engages, the higher your Gogo Factor. And then the higher your Gogo Factor, the more promotion and placement you get. So everybody that you see on the homepage has a high Gogo Factor. And what that's really saying is that you're in control of your own destiny. We don't even get to decide who we promote. It's in your hands.
So it's truly democratized to the crowd.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, are there Gogo consultants that have figured out how to help things get to the top out there?
Well, the beauty of this is that the same actions you should be taking to raise money and engage your audience are the same actions that actually drive your Gogo Factor. So it is all aligned. It's not like there's some gimmicky game going in the background.
Got it.
But yes, there is an ecosystem developing around Indiegogo of people who are they're crowdfunding consultants, but they're really marketing consultants. They're basically people who help you understand, why you're doing what you're doing, how to message that, how to identify your audience and your target customers. Because essentially that's what you're doing. Is you're going directly to your fans, your customers, the people who are going to be your customers or your fans anyway. You're just going directly to them and giving them the opportunity to be part of your success.
So let's talk about your big vision for this. You saw a need. You have a background in finance, and this is completely on trend with what we're seeing in the collaborative economy. Now, when people think of crowdfunding, they go, oh, it's just about getting money. Is that true?
No.
Oh, it's not?
No. Okay. It's part of it, for sure. Indiegogo has become a way for people who are maybe not right for traditional finance to raise money. For example, a woman by the name of Samantha, she'd started her own bakery business, Emmy's Organics. It was gluten-free macaroons. And she had got a first loan out of the bank. 9 months in, had the opportunity to distribute her product in a regional grocery store chain. The only thing is she needed $15,000 to redo her packaging, but she had just taken out a $10,000 loan 9 months earlier to start, so it wasn't like she had $15,000 in working capital sitting on the sidelines for that. So she went back to the bank and they said, hell no, you're far too young, far too risky, sorry, our risk return profiles don't work. So instead she turned to her customers and used Indiegogo, and in 3 weeks raised $15,000 by pre-offering macaroons. And the brilliance of it is that her customers were so excited for her, they actually shared it with all their friends. So she actually grew her customer base, expanded her distribution, got the money, redid her packaging. Within 6 months, she was selling across 40 states in America. And within a year, she was up on stage with President Obama for the Jobs Act. So it's a huge growth story. But so it's great for people who can't access traditional finance, and it's actually great for people who maybe aren't ready for traditional finance. So we've had campaign owners that can't get a VC to call them back, for example. Very common. And instead they go on Indiegogo. One example is a man by the name of Patrick who had invented the gravity light, which is 30 seconds of lifting creates 30 minutes of energy. He saw it as an alternative to kerosene in the developing world, which is both expensive and dangerous.
Lifting physical...
Literally lift the light for 30 seconds, and
it.
that gives you light for 30 minutes. That uses gravity to source the energy. And he couldn't get a venture capitalist to call him back, so he went on Indiegogo, raised $400,000 by offering his light as a perk in his campaign. He actually used the Tom Shoes model where you funded it and you got one light for yourself and you gave one away for free. And by the end of his campaign, guess who came calling? It was all those venture capitalists. So the point, though, is, so yes, it's a great way to access capital, but what's now also it's becoming is a market testing and market validation platform. So we're now seeing...
Or even loyalty and advocacy as well.
Loyalty and advocacy.
Or product testing.
We have campaigns that raise venture funding, and they still come to Indiegogo to launch a campaign, to launch a product, for example, and they use the perks model, which is how Indiegogo works, where you offer perks for different levels of contribution. And on Indiegogo, we have a unique function where you can swap your perks in and out. And in the process, you can basically test your pricing and test your features. We had one guy who invented an activity tracker called the Gravity Light. And he had raised $7 million in venture from Khosla, and he went on Indiegogo, raised $900,000, and in the process, he offered his tracker in black and silver, and he'd offer certain limited quantities of them, and when they would sell out, he'd offer the exact same perk at a higher price point, and he'd see when people would stop funding. So it's literally allowed him to test his pricing in a real-time way, in a market-driven way, versus in a focus group way, which is just guesswork.
So crowdfunding is really about co-innovation with the crowd.
Yeah.
It's really not about just getting access to money.
No. He actually had a bunch of funders that said, can you offer necklace accessories? And he actually fought with his customers. He said, the whole reason I designed this activity tracker would be for it to be this elegant form of tracker that fits into your clothes and hides so no one can see it. Like that was my whole differentiating value proposition. Right. So why would you want to have it on your wrist? And so then he realized that he was fighting with his customers, which is no when you're an entrepreneur. And he said, well, let's test it. So in his mid-campaign, he threw up a perk for bracelets and necklaces, and the funders basically spoke with their wallets, and it got claimed like crazy.
So
and
it's
he
crowd
actually
innovation.
He discovered a whole new revenue stream he never knew.
Okay.
And he was wrong, and he succumbed to his customers.
So here's some stats that I've learned about Indiegogo that I'd love to share with the Dent community. So it was born in 2008. Obviously, you've been working on it prior to that. Mm-hmm. There's been 190,000 campaigns in just 6 years. The average funding amount is $73 or something like that. And you yourself, you've already raised quite a bit of money, 56 million, 40 million raised in January. Was that raised from traditional institutions?
It was. We raised with Kleiner, with John Doerr, and IVP.
Why didn't you crowdfund some of that money?
I always joke, like if Indiegogo had been around when we were starting Indiegogo, it would have been a lot faster to get Indiegogo going.
So that makes me ask, can I start an Indiegogo campaign to create a crowdfunding platform?
Yeah, we've actually had it on Indiegogo. Okay. We have lots of competitors that got started on Indiegogo, which just speaks to how we embrace open. But it's actually, you bring up a good point though. We actually see crowdfunding being a permanent piece of the financial ecosystem. It's both creating an incubation platform for ideas to rise to the top in a merit-based fashion. Mm-hmm. So ideas that couldn't get access to traditional funding or weren't ready or what have you.
It's like dig with a business model.
Go for it. Thank you for the new tagline. No.
Yeah.
But so it's an incubation platform. But what's happening is, so it's disrupting finance in that regard, in that it's creating this whole new incubation platform. But that's why it's also becoming a permanent piece of the financial ecosystem, because
let's talk about that. So actually, I'd love to poll the audience. Are there any VCs here in the house? If you could please raise your arm.
It's okay, you can admit it.
I know there's VCs here. I've been drinking with you all week. Okay, that was definitely not true. They're tired, okay. So, in my opinion, this model disrupts VCs because you can get money from the peers. But I would love to hear from you, Danae, why the VCs should thank you for Indiegogo disrupting them.
Because we're providing this incubation platform where we're actually de-risking the investment process for them. Because VCs technically have two roles. One is to pick companies, which essentially is gambling. And the second role is amplification. So if they picked right and got lucky, then they would put more money in. And so what we're doing is we're actually de-risking the investment process because we're allowing them to step away from their betting role or gambling role and focus more on amplification. By being a platform where ideas rise to the top in a merit-based way, what's also happening is literally people are funding with their dollar. And so what I like to say is the best indication of a market is the market itself. And what we're doing is creating pre-markets for ideas. And so in that, you gather data, you gather pricing information, you gather where the customers are. You learn a ton in that process. And therefore, you allow entrepreneurs to prove themselves in a merit-based way, which then allows them to then have the conversations with the venture capitalists who now know that they're actually investing in something that has some legs.
It's true. So my friends who went to CES, I don't go, it's too big now for me, but some of them were telling me that the most common conversation we see from the consumer electronics startups was how much money they've raised on Indiegogo or Kickstarter. That was a sign of traction. Mm-hmm. Like that was the determinate metric. I don't know what you guys have seen out there.
Well, what's interesting about Indiegogo is because we're open, we don't actually, corrupt is a strong word, but We don't infiltrate the results, because by being open, it's a true market testing platform. Because if you are unsuccessful at raising money, what that means is that you didn't have an audience that cared, and that's okay, because now we've actually gotten thank you notes from people that were highly unsuccessful at raising money on Indiegogo, and they said, in 3 weeks, I actually learned that I had an idea that nobody wanted, and you just saved me 2 years of my life and all my life savings, dumping into an idea that wasn't going to see the light of day anyways. And so in that regard, that's why we see campaigns sometimes that don't raise money as a huge success, because it's a great market testing platform. But that means too, on the flip side, that if you do raise money and raise lots, you have something that really matters. And that's why we don't put our bias in there. We don't pick and choose projects, which is one of the differences that has evolved as the industry has evolved. Other platforms have put in a curation approach where they pick and choose projects. But because we don't do that, we have that ability to be a true market testing platform, and we can't kind of corrupt the results.
So you're democratized. In every system I see around democratization, though, there tends to be gaming. People can pump up results. There's a whole industry around Google search engine results called the SEO space. Could there be a risk of PR or consultants starting to game the Indiegogo rankings and ratings?
Well, we don't publish it for that very reason. And actually, even most of the people in our company don't even know what the actual algorithms are.
Secret sauce.
So, and that's my co-founder who, he and I originally came up with it, and now I don't even actually know. And he runs our data science team, and
so you keep it under lock and key, but
we're constantly
changing
evolving machine learning, using all the classic big data approaches to keep it honest.
Fair enough. So this bottom-up approach, this crowd-based innovation, is so opposite of what corporations have done. And they build products and they throw it out to the market and spend millions of dollars on putting it on celebrities' hands or putting up billboards. What can big corporations that build a product and shovel it to the market learn from your model? And have you partnered with any big companies?
Yeah. Where large companies and brands are actually taking interest now is using Indiegogo as an R&D platform, like a market testing platform. Philips, for example, came to us and they ran an entire contest to try to unleash the next big idea around health innovation. And so they sponsored a whole effort where a whole bunch of campaigns went up on Indiegogo to raise money for their next innovation, and they ran a contest, and the winner they literally funded further and flew to headquarters and stuff. We also see...
I want to dive down into that. So what happens with the IP and the revenue that comes out of that product?
That's for the entrepreneur and for Philips to decide how they want to work together moving forward.
Got it.
What we're also seeing is a lot of brands are using it as a or customer engagement platform, and even a cause marketing platform. So Honda, for example, this was awesome. This speaks to the beauty of being open. We didn't even know Honda was using us. And so one day we were like, what is that campaign? It went high in the Gogo Factor. And it was basically run by Honda, and it was a campaign to raise money to help turn a lot of the drive-in movies, those outdoor drive-ins across the country.
Yeah.
Well, there's law now that says you have to become digital, and the process of becoming digital costs several $1,000s. And most of these drive-ins are mom and pop shop run. They're not necessarily for-profit ventures, so they just don't have the money. So a lot of these mom and pop drive-ins were going to have to close because of the law, and so Honda wanted to support them, and they started a campaign to help them, and so it was a way to show that they cared. But a kind of a greater example is Whole Foods, who they care a lot about healthy living, clearly, and healthy eating, and so they used Indiegogo as rather than just write a big check and build a bunch of urban gardens across America. Instead, they took instead of giving a man a fish, let's teach a man to fish and he'll eat for life approach. And they went into their local communities and found 70 local activists that really knew their community well. And each one of those activists ran an Indiegogo campaign to raise $2,000 to build an urban garden. And Whole Foods actually, rather than write the check, they provided a lot of the marketing support. But in the process, then the community kind of took ownership of this garden, and started learning about what it means.
Right.
And they actually then brought in another emerging brand called Pact, which is a organic underwear and sock company where...
I'm wearing some right.
You are?
No.
Oh,
I want
bummer.
some.
It's a great company.
They're red.
Proceeds go to, what they do is they design underwear in different designs, and each design goes to a different cause. So they worked with Haiti, and they did stuff, and this year was Urban Gardens. And so they actually contributed a whole bunch of perks to the whole campaign. So they basically equipped 70 local activists with free underwear and socks to offer to their community. So their community is literally funding $2,500 at a time to build their urban garden, and they're getting free socks and underwear out of it. So it was basically a really kind of wonderful community building.
So what is the
experience.
most surprising thing you've seen go up the go-go factor? What's the thing that would shock your grandmother?
So I knew we were doing something right when this campaign happened.
Okay.
And speaks to open. There was a couple that actually had applied to another crowdfunding platform because they hadn't heard of us yet and got rejected.
Does it start with a K?
It happens to, yes. And it was a couple that wanted to have a baby, but they couldn't afford IVF. And so
It's about $30,000, $40,000.
I think it was 10, but maybe it's more now. And so someone's like, use Indiegogo, they don't judge you. And they went on Indiegogo, literally clicked the button, create, got going that day, and raised the $10,000. 90% of the money came from strangers.
What's the perk? What did they give back?
This
to the
one they
community?
actually didn't have a perk. 90% of campaigns that reach their target do offer perks. Yeah, but I mean the most.
You get a babysit.
Everyone said, did they name the baby Indiegogo? They did not name the baby Indiegogo, but the baby was born, and so that person exists because of Indiegogo, which is kind of awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love that story.
Okay.
Good job.
Well, another really cool thing that speaks to the real-time nature. This is another one that was like, holy moly.
You know what? Just to go on that, we might see crowdfunding of funerals as a flip side.
We have seen it. No,
I don't mean that in any
bitter.
joking way. I mean that in a very morbid, serious way with where the economy's headed.
It's bittersweet. I mean, there's a lot of campaigns, people who raise money for if they don't have health insurance to pay for operations. In a way, it's bittersweet for me because it pains me that our health system doesn't take care of everybody. But I'm glad we were able to actually help and allow people to deal with hard times.
The crowd gets what they need from each other. Now
It's a community engagement tool, yeah. Allowing people to come together and do what I like to say Indiegogo unleashes the niche. Just because, we've had $1 million plus campaigns on Indiegogo, which is really nice. It's a great, the PR, the press love that kind of stuff.
Right.
I think we had the largest campaign in history, raised $13 million for a phone. But I think the revolution that's happening is happening on the long tail. It's all the ideas that are going on board that don't need millions, but maybe need $10,000, $20,000 that literally will change somebody's life. There was a woman who had dreamed of starting her own bread company. She's like an artisan bread maker, but she was working 9 to 5, saving $100 a month. The thought of saving $10,000 was going to take her years. And she discovered Indiegogo and realized, well, there's literally no downside. If I raise no money, then I'm in the same position. So she went on Indiegogo within a week. She had the $10,000 to buy the oven. She pre-offered bread as her perks. And literally she sent us a note, like, you've changed my life.
And that's called free bread, right?
It's called free bread,
okay.
Yeah. So it's happening at all, the number of zeros doesn't matter. It's whether you're able to reach your goal and take the next step forward with your project, and then come back and do another campaign to keep growing. We see that happen a lot. And
the returns don't have to be monetary returns. It could be a trade or a barter, or it could just be a donation of some form.
Yeah.
So I'd like to go to the audience in just a second, see if there's maybe 2 questions, and I want to definitely give you closing opportunity to close things on the thoughts. Let's talk about the United States government. How have they reacted to crowdfunding, which I'm sure I know it raises the eyebrows of financial services institutions and brokers and investors. Mm-hmm. How has the government reacted to crowdfunding?
Surprisingly, really well. My original idea was to democratize investing, and when I met my co-founders in business school, they looked at me like, are you crazy? If you're not using the internet to democratize finance, you might as well give up right now. And I was like, you're making a very good point. But you can't at that time you couldn't invest online. So we tried to navigate the laws back then and realized that as newbie entrepreneurs, let's not try to boil the ocean, improve social fundraising and change the law at the same time. So we just went forward, came up with the perks concept, ended up being a kind of a pillar of the industry, and decided to revisit changing the law 5-10 years down the road. 2 years pass, a blogger's talking about how we were starting to take off. Bloggers talking about why can't people invest online. I let them know about the SEC laws from the 30s and that they're put in place for good intentions to protect people.
But perks bypasses, like the investment.
Perks you're not allowed, the only thing you're not allowed to offer in perks is any kind of upside or profit participation. Any kind of, that makes it a security, and therefore you need to regulate it and you need to disclose. And if you're trying to waste $25,000 to open a restaurant, spending $50,000 to register that doesn't make any sense, right? So we pushed forward, and we actually, the blogger and I started a campaign on Indiegogo in 2010 that literally, it's a little meta here, but it was called, I was a customer of Indiegogo, crowdfunding campaign to change crowdfunding law. And we literally raised $1,000 to pay a lawyer to write a petition to the SEC to change this SEC laws so that we could offer equity, because if you fast forward 80 years, back in the 30s, the only way to protect people from losing all their net worth is just not allow them to. But now, fast forward 80 years, we have technology, we can limit, we can track, we have new ways to actually protect people, just limit how much they can lose, but the laws hadn't caught up. And so that's what we wanted to do. And so that actually was the seed that then a bunch of awesome people, I guess lobbyists, I'm not really good at that, took it and pushed it forward, and then the White House came calling and asked us for all our customers, and that's when we sent them up on stage with President Obama. And what was shocking was that
the White House is backing crowdfunding. Is that what I'm hearing?
So what happened is that was what led to the Jobs Act, which is an act that shows that the White House is totally in support of this. Because what they saw was Samantha's stories and people who had gotten rejected for loans and were able to start businesses and grow them and hire people and create jobs. Okay. And so it's an engine, and we totally see it as an engine for our economy. And what was cool was that apparently it got 92% bipartisan support, which I guess is unheard of in DC. And you guys probably know more about that. Kidding. Anyways, and so now it's the regulations are being finalized, and we're excited about it. We still have a perks-based business to serve and nourish, but we've been trying to be helpful to DC to figure out how to mitigate risk and all that stuff.
I mean, it is a form of raw democracy in a simple way. Let's go to the audience for questions. Raise your hand and I'll repeat your question. Back here, this lady right here.
So I'm an angel investor, and I'm also an investor in a competing platform that is equity-based at crowdfunding.com. And this is very disruptive to angel investing, not only in DC, because it's free equity in your platform. To these companies. I've used your platform for a wind farm here in Idaho to run that. But my question today is, what are you going to use your raises for going forward? What is your roadmap? What are you going to do with your roadmap?
Let me repeat the question. The question is, it's a user, it's a VC, an angel in the space. You've raised money, Indiegogo. What are you going to use that money for in the future?
Sure, continue to grow internationally. We're in 4 languages and 5 currencies, but clearly there are more currencies and languages across the world. So we're going to continue to customize and optimize our product for our customer bases all across the world. Mobile will be a big push, since Indiegogo is all about real-time funding. I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a bunch of protests in Turkey that erupted. I think they started on like a Saturday. On Sunday, the media started covering it.
Blocking Twitter.
A bunch of Turkish Americans were really upset about how the media was covering it. So on Monday, they created an Indiegogo campaign. By Tuesday, they were raising money to take out an ad in the New York Times. Wow. By Tuesday, they had raised $100,000. By Wednesday, they submitted the ad. By Thursday, it showed up in the New York Times. All instant. Same thing, a woman got bullied on a bus. Her name was Karen Klein. A video caught it. Some person saw it online, was really upset, that pressed a button, clicked create, launched a campaign to raise $5,000 to send her on vacation. A couple weeks later, he had raised $700,000 from 60 countries across the world to help this woman. Clearly, bullying was an issue that affects people across the world. So it's the real-time nature of it that our open platform facilitates. That's why we don't have applications and curation. And we believe in that. And we believe that the power should be in the hands of the people to decide which ideas come to life, not anyone else's. And so we'll continue to nourish that. Because of the open platform, we've done a ton on the back end around trust and safety and customer happiness. We've developed proprietary fraud algorithm stuff that combining it with all the best practices out there, but continuing to innovate in that regard, because in order to be an open platform, we need to make sure we're protecting everybody and keeping the people who are trying to exploit it off.
Thank you. We'll do one more question, but it just reminds me of, in the future, we might see homeless people with signs that say, crowdfund me so I can learn skills and get off the streets, which has happened. There's stories of that. There's another question over here, and then we'll have to close.
So, as states like Washington, a few others create crowdfunding as investment laws, do you see yourself creating kind of state-based platforms for those niche markets where they're allowing crowdfunding as investment? How do you see engaging with this kind of patchwork effect of laws around crowdfunding?
I mean,
So the question, I'm going to repeat it for the video. The question is, crowdfunding laws vary state to state, I'm sure country to country, and different currencies, and who knows, Bitcoin. How will you adjust to all these dynamic individual cultures?
Well, I think our by leaning forward on equity, we're going to take our time. I don't think we're going to try to haphazardly pull something together. To really focus on the customer and do it well, it's going to take time. But I also think that the next few years are going to be Wild West period, where laws will be changing and people will be trying different things. There'll be some fraud. People will get all crazy. Equity crowdfunding's terrible. Same thing happened in e-commerce 20 years ago. Companies got smart. That fraud went away. Same kind of evolution. So it'll be really messy. I do think, though, that the power of why crowdfunding works is that it removes all barriers. And that includes biases from gatekeepers to borders of countries. And what we see now are people who are launching these ideas out of Australia, but getting funding out of Kazakhstan because their customers are there and their people have aligned interests. So this concept of borders is actually going away, and actually the power of being global is global is where the power is. It's very robust, and so I think the law, ecosystems won't really develop unless it can go cross-border, cross states, cross country lines, et cetera. I mean, one thing to close on, because I know we have to close, is what we're really trying to do here is make what funding is, from a funder's perspective, is the ability to shape the world around them. They, rather than sit back and complain that Hollywood's putting out crap films, now they can go make it happen with the price of a cup of coffee. Like, we've literally lowered the barriers to being a patron, to being an investor, to being part of something. And so what should happen if we do our job right is that funding becomes a part of the daily habit. Funding becomes as liquid as commerce. And it's kind of everyone's kind of duty as a person, human being on this planet, is to make sure that the things building around them are the things that this world needs. And you can do that now with a few bucks. And so with that, by creating this liquid kind of platform that's global, that connects anybody to anybody, you're also removing a lot of the biases. So, and ideas are, I've said this before, are coming up in a merit-based fashion. And so what you're going to see and what's happening is demographic populations that have traditionally been locked out of finance. An example is, if you look at the venture capital space, only something like 8% of venture-backed companies are run by women. Well, we know that women are just as entrepreneurial as men. They start just as many small businesses. And on Indiegogo, because we're a total level playing field where anyone can go, you don't have to ask permission and apply, 47% of all successful campaigns are run by women. So it just speaks that when you create a level playing field, everyone having equal opportunity, the best ideas do rise to the top, and they represent all of the world. And so, I was telling you a story about a young woman who, this is the power of technology. She was living in Kenya, grew up in Nairobi, found her way into an internet cafe, founded a tool, taught herself to code online, was able to apply and get into a coding school in America, couldn't afford it, went on Indiegogo, raised the $5,000 to go to school. U.S. government wouldn't actually allow her to come because she was 17, which you're not allowed to travel as a minor to the U.S. without a parent or guardian. So rather than give up, she said, screw that, I'm going to start my own coding school in Nairobi, and she raised money in Indiegogo to do that. And like, that's what we're about, is unleashing the entrepreneurial spirit, the ideas. They're everywhere. And like, if you just give people the tools to get it done, and you make success based on how hard they're willing to work and how much their audience cares, then anything is possible. And that's what we're really about. And I guess we have to wrap up.
Thank you. So I think I want to summarize all of those beautiful things you said. In crowdfunding, this empowers the people to dent the future.
Yeah, I say the future of funding is all of us funding the future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.